Okay, so let's talk about generative AI and higher education. It feels like it hasn't just knocked on the door, it's kicked it wide open. I mean, seemingly overnight, tools like ChatGPT went from this, cool new thing to a campus-wide reality. And it's forcing a fundamental rethink of just about everything. How we teach, how we learn, even how we test.
And really, it all kind of boils down to this one simple but, incredibly complex question. It's the question every student is asking, every professor is wrestling with, and every single administrator is trying to figure out for their whole institution. And here's the thing. The answer isn't just a simple yes or no. Not even close. Just searching for an answer is forcing this massive top-to-bottom reevaluation of some of academia's oldest traditions. I mean, just take the classic term paper. For generations, right? It's been the go-to way to see if a student is doing their own work, to gauge their critical thinking. But now, what does own work even mean when an AI can help you with literally every single step, from brainstorming all the way to the final draft? And let's be real, trying to ban these tools is basically impossible. So the real question, the real challenge is, how do we adapt? This sudden arrival, it's just created this huge wave of uncertainty. And it's leaving everyone, from first-year students all the way up to the dean, with way more questions than answers. And we're not just talking about academic questions here. No, these are practical, ethical, logistical questions, and they're coming from absolutely every corner of the university. So if you're a student, you're probably wondering about your rights, your data, like, can my professor actually require me to create a ChatGPT account? Are they allowed to force me to agree to some third party's terms of service and just hand over my personal info? Then you've got the teachers and the faculty. And for them, it's a full-blown crisis of assessment. I mean, the very core of their job is to evaluate what a student has learned. And now the whole idea of what a student has actually contributed is, well, it's blurry. Academic integrity itself is on the line. And hey, this goes way beyond the classroom. Think about university staff. They're wondering about efficiency versus security. Is it okay to upload a confidential internal memo to some public AI just to get a quick summary? What are the data protection risks there? It's a huge deal. And of course, all of this lands right on the desks of the university leadership. And their challenge is just massive. How on earth do you create a policy that's coherent, that's fair, that's effective, and that addresses everyone's concerns in a field that is literally changing by the week? Okay, so faced with all this chaos, universities are quickly realizing they can't just wing it, They can't react on a case-by-case basis. What they need is a playbook, a set of university-wide guidelines to help everyone navigate this completely new terrain. And there's a really fantastic concept for this. It's the German idea of Leitplanken. Think of them as guardrails. The goal isn't to create some rigid, super restrictive rulebook. It's about building guardrails, a flexible framework that gives people a sense of direction, that guides the discussion, and helps everyone move forward safely. So how many universities have actually built these guardrails? Well, a recent analysis from Germany's Hochschulforum Digitalisierung looked at documents that were submitted by 46 different universities, and the number of actual guidelines they found was just 27. Yep, that's right. A lot of the other submissions were just, minor policy updates or little notes saying that their guidelines were in progress. And that just goes to show you how new and how challenging all of this is. Most universities are really still in the very early stages of trying to figure it all out. So what does a good playbook, a good set of guidelines, actually look like? Well, by looking at the ones that do exist, a pretty clear blueprint is starting to emerge. So the most effective guidelines, they do 5 key things. Yeah, of course, they regulate what's allowed and what's not, but they go so much further. They also contextualize AI within the university's mission, they inform people about the tech, they orient them on how to use it responsibly, and, this is the cool part, they even inspire new ways of teaching and learning. This blueprint has some really clear, actionable steps. First, you start with the basics. You level the playing field, assume nobody knows anything, and you explain the risks and the possibilities. Next, you gotta rethink exams. It means facing the music and admitting that the old formats we've used for decades, they might just be broken now. After that, it's all about transparency. Students have to disclose when they use AI, usually through an updated declaration of authorship. And finally, you shift from just restricting things to actually empowering people. You build skills, offering training for both students and staff so everyone can use these tools competently and ethically. Of course, these guidelines don't just exist in a vacuum, right? They're framed by some pretty hard legal boundaries, things like data protection and copyright law. So, good guidelines explain these limits clearly, and they advise everyone to be cautious, to be risk averse, especially when you get into those legal gray areas. So, once you have these guidelines, how do you get the information out there? Well, you've got a couple of main options. You could do a dedicated website, which is great because it can be updated all the time, it's more interactive. Or you could go with a formal PDF document. That tends to feel more official, and it's easy to reference with page numbers. Honestly, the best strategies usually end up combining both. All right, so after digging through all these different approaches, all the formats, all the rules, there is one single principle that rises above everything else. It is the most important thing. And here it is. Julius Friedrich, the project lead for the report, he says it perfectly. The guidelines have to be dynamic so they can react flexibly to changes. I mean, the technology isn't standing still for a second, so your guidelines can't either. They absolutely have to be living documents. And that, right there, is the ultimate takeaway. In the world of AI, creating a set of guidelines isn't some task you do once and then check off a list. Nope, it is an ongoing, constant process of adaptation and revision. Which really leaves us with this one final thought. A rigid rulebook? It's brittle. It's going to break the minute the next technological leap happens. But a flexible roadmap? Now that can help guide an entire community through a landscape that is constantly changing. So the question for every single student, professor, and administrator out there is this: is your university building a rulebook or a roadmap?